No one.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Gators Online Show. I'm Keith Niebuhr. That is Zach Albaverdi. We cover the University of Florida for On3 and Gators Online. We got a lot to talk about today. Obviously, the Lane Kiffin Bowl is this Saturday in Oxford, Mississippi. One of the more anticipated Florida Ole Miss games ever. I mean, obviously, they're not annual rivals or anything like that, so they haven't played a ton of big games. Of course, you got the loss at the Swamp back when Tim Tebow played, and the promise came after that game. And you've got some other memorable games, but it's not Florida Georgia, it's not Florida State, it's not some of these Florida LSU. But this week, it's bigger than any of them because this is again the Lane Kiffin Bowl. Florida is in pursuit of Lane Kiffin to be its next football coach. Ole Miss is trying hard to hang on to Lane Kiffin's at. So there is intrigue all over the place. Ole Miss is 9-1, and look, if they win out, they're in the playoffs, and they may actually still get in even if they don't win out. So they're right in the thick of this national championship picture. Yep. Meanwhile, Florida is coming off one of the most embarrassing losses in our lifetimes, Zach, a 38-7 defeat at Lexington against the unranked and at the time 3-win Kentucky. So there's all these things colliding right now. So we've got a lot to dig into today. So just your general thoughts, Zach. This is what we've all been building up for right here. This is it.
Yeah, no, this is an exciting matchup. I think even before all the stuff happened with Billy Napier, that this was going to be an intriguing matchup because of last year's game. And you figured Ole Miss was going to be good, would have a shot to be in the college football playoff. We didn't know if Florida would be in the playoff picture. Certainly there was conversation about it before the year. Yet again, here the Rebels are in playoff contention, and Florida's trying to play spoiler. But the storylines are different. They're heightened more than ever with Lane Kiffin in Florida. And for the first time, Keith, Ole Miss coach Lane Kiffin addressed some of the Florida stuff directly. He was asked direct questions by Ole Miss reporters this week. And look, I've been tuning into some of his press conferences. I've been waiting to see if somebody was going to ask specifically about Florida, if he was going to address where he stood with Ole Miss or anything about his future or his coaching. And it hadn't really, other than he made the comment to ESPN on air about that he was going to address the stuff with his team. That was a couple weeks ago. But on Monday, he got asked specific questions and gave specific answers. And I thought gave some really telling stuff. He talked about the Gators as well, discussed DJ Lagway. I thought it was a very enlightening press conference and a good way to kick off the week.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's the elephant in the room.
He addressed it.
This is wild. I think long before you and I were born, Zach, back in the late 60s, the great Gators coach who coached Steve Spurrier, Ray Graves, was retiring. And Florida had picked its successor. I'm going to try to dig into this at Gators Online in the next few weeks. But they had picked their successor, and they chose Doug Dickey, who at the time was the coach at Tennessee. All right. And he had been a former Florida player and was having great success as the head coach at Tennessee as a really young guy. But as luck would have it, Zach, those two teams actually played each other in a bowl game at the end of the year. Okay. So he was leaving for Florida and he was coaching against Florida. So it was this wild set of circumstances. And now we have this wild set of circumstances. Now, obviously, we don't know what Lane Kiffin is going to do. You and I have talked about this. The chatter out there seems to be positive for Florida. And when you look at Florida, when you're talking about Florida search, when you're talking about their pursuit, of Lane Kiffin, again, positive chatter, positive buzz. There's cautious optimism on the Florida side. They can get this thing done. However, there's also cautious optimism, even some confidence on the Ole Miss side that they can keep Lane Kiffin. So there's just so many fascinating elements to this game. And of course, his son, Knox Kiffin, well, his grandfather on the dad's side was John Reeves, right? The Gator great quarterback who played at Florida, by the way, in that 1969 bowl game against Doug Dickey. So there's just all these twists and turns to this and that we know are coming. There's a lot of drama. There's a lot of intrigue in this game. Zach, I think Lane Kiffin has actually handled this about as well as you can handle it. I guess I take that back. I guess if you knew for sure you weren't leaving, you could just shut it down. But
I don't think he knows for sure.
Right. So why do that would be disingenuous in a sense, perhaps. I think what he doesn't want to do is what coaches have done in the past, and just come out and say something, and then you go out and do the other thing. Like Tommy Tuberville, I have to leave in a pine box, that whole speech, and then he ended up leaving. And Nick Saban wasn't going to leave the Dolphins and then left. And that doesn't make these guys terrible people. But why put yourself in that situation? His theory is, I'm not going to really address what I'm going to do until it's time to address what I'm going to do, and that's his right. That's his prerogative. So, but Zach, the two teams now, man, coming in on different planes, man. I mean, this is wild, and that even adds to it. Florida is now, at last check, a 16.5-point underdog. You spent time talking to the players yesterday. What did they have to say about Lane Kiffin? The players.
Yeah, I'll dive into that. I do want to address something that he said, though, Keith.
Go ahead.
He was asked, like I said, a lot of things about Florida. He was asked a lot of things about coaching and what matters to him as far as a job. He was asked if he was going to have to make a decision on Florida and Ole Miss before the portal opens. Like, again, some very specific, pointed questions. I thought the most telling thing to me that he said was the blue blood comment. He was asked, what are his top priorities in a job? What matters to him the most? And he said at the start of his answer that he wasn't ready for that question. So props to the reporter for phrasing it and asking it the way that he did. And Kiffin basically said that, back in the day, people used to say the things that mattered were facilities, how many practice fields you had, locker rooms. He said that's not in anymore. Now it's about NIL, and it's about how much support that you have financially and how much can you pay players, basically. However, he made a comment that said, despite that, there are still things that matter and advantages that the Blue Bloods have, and basically ran through a list of things such as stadium size, history, Heisman's, national championships, location to talent. He said that those things still mattered in the decision-making process. Yes, you need to have all the things that coaches used to care about, and yes, you need to have the things that matter the most right now, which is NIL and rev share. But all those other factors that he listed that I just went through, he feels like way into the equation. And let's be honest, Ole Miss ain't got any of that. They don't have the stadium size, the history, the Heisman's, the championships, or even the location, the talent that Florida does. And for him to mention that the way that he did, and also being a coach at this point that hasn't come out and ruled out going to Florida or hasn't said that he's staying at Ole Miss, I think you read something like that, and those are – when he said it, my eyes jumped. I said, well, dang, you got to love that, hearing that if you're a Florida fan.
Of course, if he didn't have a history of trolling, you would love that even more.
That too. But this is also a guy that has constantly complained about the crowd at Ole Miss. So it's like, is he saying something there? It caught my eye though.
I like that when he answered, and forget about his words were. I liked how he answered. I liked his mannerisms. He didn't talk down to reporters in that press conference as coaches sometimes do, whether intentionally or unintentionally. I thought he gave a lot of thought to his answers, and it was interesting. I know he's talked about how he has a lot of admiration for Steve Spurrier, and one of the traits that they shared, and I interviewed Lane years ago. He had just been named OC at Southern Cal, and his father was the defensive coordinator, Monty Kiffin of the Tampa Bay Bucks, the late Monty Kiffin. And so I worked at the St. Pete Times. They said, hey, get a hold of Lane Kiffin. Let's get an interesting story here on Monty Kiffin's son. So I interviewed him. I can't remember how I set it up. I might have actually gone through friends of his, maybe, whatever. I don't remember how it was set up, but he was great. I'd never talked to him before. And he was a lot more humble than people realize. He was a lot more, I don't know how to say this. He put a lot of thought into his answers. And so I think people have this impression that he's just this guy that has just one quip after the other. And that's the impression, Zach, that they always have of Steve Spurrier. But you've talked to Steve Spurrier a bunch, Zach. It isn't just one quip after the other. It's a lot of thoughtful stuff, and then you get the quip. And that's how it is with Lane Kiffin. And I really enjoyed watching his press conference yesterday, which was one of the first times I've really paid attention to it. And I don't know, it's interesting. Zach, anything you want to add on what he said? Do you want to turn it over to what the Florida guys said yesterday?
Yeah, yeah.
That was
I would encourage Florida fans, as I did on the Gators online message board, to go watch it because I think that if you felt Florida's chances were good going into it, I think you'll feel better about it after watching it.
okay.
That was my read on it.
All right. So in Gainesville yesterday, you were working your tail off.
Basketball to football.
I was at lunch and relaxing and down here in Tampa, but you were working hard. And so you talked to some football players on the UF team. And you and some of the other reporters asked about all this stuff. I mean, hey, look, it's the Lane Kiffin Bowl. This guy maybe could be your coach next year. What were your thoughts? What did they well, actually, Zach, you mentioned this off camera that they at first didn't really want to dig into that. And then they sort of opened up a little bit. But how did that all go? And what did they have to say?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, Billy Gonzalez took the podium first, and I give Billy Gonzalez a lot of credit because obviously, he's doing the best job that he can given the circumstances, but he knows that he's going into a matchup where Florida's number one coaching candidate is going to be on the other sideline. This was going to get asked about. It was going to get addressed, and I thought that he did a good job of trying to answer it the best way he could. He did say he did get asked, "Hey, are you aware of the Lane Kiffin buzz to Florida?" And he said, "Yes, absolutely." And did kind of address that dynamic of trying to prepare his team and his players for this game, knowing that there's a chance that the guy on the other sideline could be coaching these guys next year, which is a crazy dynamic to be dealing with. And probably he gave this long answer about how, as you would expect, they got to focus on what they need to do, keep it about themselves as a staff, as a team, during this answer that he was asked about Lane Kiffin. But the follow-up was, do you think Lane Kiffin would be a fit at Florida? And Billy Gonzalez was like, I probably shouldn't even answer those questions, to be honest with you. But he did say that he thought that he was a good football coach and that there was a lot of great football coaches out there and that he was one of them. So he gave a great diplomatic answer. By that time, though, I'm sure, shout out to the communication staff, Scott, Matt, and Alex, like they knew, okay, we better prepare these players for some Lane Kiffin questions before they come in here because they're going to get asked. And sure enough, Devin Moore came through, Jaden Baugh came through. Both of those guys got asked about it. They did a good job of trying to downplay it. Devin Moore kind of gave him some props as a coach and what he's done at Ole Miss. Jaden Baugh was not budging. He was not going to give any Lane Kiffin sound bites at that podium, and kept it to, hey, we're worried about us. I haven't even looked at those guys. I want to talk about Florida. So he towed the company line, as they like to say. But there was like you said, Keith, it's the elephant in the room. You can't not talk about it.
Jaden Baugh, if Florida can get this done and get Lane Kiffin, Jaden Baugh, you would think, would be one of the people most excited about it. Now, you would say, wait a second, Keith, isn't Lane Kiffin this passing guru? Well, he is, but he also had Quinshon Judkins rush for over 1,400 yards a couple years ago. And Jaden Baugh, I'm friends with his dad, and Jaden Baugh's dream's always to win the Heisman. He knows it's everybody's dream, right? You get 1,400 yards for a team that wins 9 or more games, you're probably going to be in the conversation. So, look, it's going to be so interesting. I mean, these next few weeks, the first few weeks, we're in week 4 of this coaching search, Zach. And the first few weeks, it was, hey, look, we know Lane Kiffin's the lead guy. Here's some potential number 2 guys. We don't really know. You and I both talked to high-ranking sources, guys that are really plugged in. Nobody seems to know who the clear-cut number 2 would be. But all eyes are on Lane right now. And if they can get this done, it's just going to be Gator Nation is just going to be ecstatic. It's something they want. And Zach, this Lane Kiffin, he's come a long way with Florida fans. This was a guy that they despised 15, 20 years ago.
That's my story.
This guy,
That's my story. I'm writing this week at Gators Online about how he just completely has repaired his reputation. And there's no better example than how he feels. Yeah, than how he feels by Florida fans. Like you can't look to anywhere else than you get to kind of represent that.
Zach, when Billy Gonzalez was talking about Lane Kiffin and saying he was a really good coach. It sounded. I listened to the press. It sounded genuine. It sounded like he does actually have some real respect for him.
Oh, I mean, he does, but let's be honest. I mean, that could be the guy that he's interviewing with to stay on the staff. So you would think that he would say something positive, but I think that he genuinely did feel that everything that he said. Look, he's gone against that guy multiple times.
That's right. And by the way, let me point out, Lane Kiffin said Florida was a dangerous team. Everybody's saying that every week because, you can't, like, if you're Texas right now, you have to say Florida's a really good team. They're way better than the record, man. Trust us. Because you lost to Florida and you're trying to get in the playoff. You need people to believe that. But right now, Florida is not a very good team, Zach. They're not winning. They played tough against Georgia. And
I do think they have good talent, which was something that he spoke to.
Okay.
He said when you see them at times, they've got positions where they've got elite talent.
Yeah. At times, yes.
Yeah.
That's true. All right. Okay, Zach.
But I think Florida fans appreciated him saying, "Oh, I think Kentucky was an outlier," and they can take that as, they didn't turn him off, Keith.
Well, it was definitely an outlier. 75 years worth of an outlier there. 75 years since Florida had lost by that much to Kentucky. I'm still kind of blown away by that because sometimes when you hear stats like Zach, the team, you haven't played that team very often, right? They played Kentucky every year for about the last 50 years. You know what I mean? Like they've played a lot of games to get to that terrible result. And by the way, Kentucky was really good in the late 1970s and never beat Florida that bad. I mean, like really good, like 10, 11 wins. Good. Zach, also yesterday, and we've got to get to some ad reads too, a couple interesting things. And look, Eugene Wilson's out for the season. Can you give us the latest update on the Florida wide receiver?
Yeah,
tough blow.
Let's jump to ad read real quick.
Okay, do the ad read first.
All right, let's.
I always get out of order here, Zach. You know that.
Let's head over and give a shout out as we do each and every episode to Game Time. College football season, man, it's crazy how far in we already are, Keith. Like only 3 games left, and there's 2 more left in the swamp. So you want to make sure that if you're a Florida fan, you get your butts in the stands. 2 rivalry games. You'll get a senior day as well. So you want to be on hand for this. And I would imagine, too, given the circumstances, like Florida's still going to pack out the stadium. It's still going to be packed for Florida State. And it's probably going to be hard to get your hands on some tickets. But the Game Time app gives the advantage back to the fans. It is the hack for unlocking amazing tickets and experiences in a few taps. It's incredibly easy to use, and the Game Time guarantee means that you can trust you'll get 100% authentic tickets on time and at the best price. Plus, fees are always included, so what you see is what you pay. There's no surprise fees at checkout, and you can get college football tickets for as low as $25. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code ON3 for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use the redeem code ON3. That's ON and the number 3 for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go download the Game Time app today. And if you are going to be in Oxford and trying to get your hands on some tickets, I promise you, Game Time will throw you the lob.
Zach, I'm mapping out a trip in April, just a little weekend getaway out of the West Coast, and I've been on that Game Time app. I'm looking for some San Francisco Giants tickets. I got to go there and root against them because I'm a Dodgers fan. So listen, Zach, this has been this has been a tough year, right? Florida's sitting here at 3-6, one of the worst seasons in recent memory for Gators football. Dallas Wilson gets hurt a few weeks ago. He's out for the season. And now you got another standout receiver, Eugene Wilson, coming off his great game against Georgia. What's the latest?
Yeah. Unfortunate news on Eugene. We had heard last week that he got hurt in the Georgia game. Didn't know the extent of the injury, but we learned it on Monday from Billy Gonzalez. He said he had a high ankle sprain that's going to require tightrope surgery. And he's going to have that on Wednesday, and that will put him out for the season. Unfortunate, this is the second year in a row for Eugene Wilson III where he's had a season-ending injury. And just disappointing that that happened to him, given the breakout and career best performance that he had against Georgia. It looked like he was now maybe going to be in an offense or should we say with a play caller that was going to give him an opportunity to really showcase more of his ability than what we'd seen during the first half of the season. And it sucks for Florida because, look, remember, Keith, Billy Gonzalez came out and said in his opening press conference the day that he got promoted or the day after that he wanted to spread it out, remember? And he wanted to get the playmakers involved. And that meant the receivers. And when he made those comments, Dallas Wilson was still healthy and Eugene Wilson III were still healthy. And I think that in his mind, what he thought the passing game could potentially be involved those two. And it also involved a healthy Vernell Brown III, who was still, he was practicing last week, but he was in a non-contact jersey. So this receiving corps and this offense still has not been at full strength. And now this Eugene Wilson, the third injury, is just the latest setback at that position.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Khalil Jackson never played this season.
No.
You got Dallas Wilson now out for the season. You got Tank Hawkins decided to go to take a red
shirt, yeah.
And for the season. I actually don't blame him, by the way, but based on he wasn't playing much anyway. And then, but you could argue, okay, with these injuries, he would have played. I get that. But then you got Vernell Brown missed a game and being injured, and now Eugene Wilson. Just
and Aiden Mizell's just been in and out all year too.
That's right. The other elephant in the room this week, Zach, how about this? We're 20 minutes in. We haven't even talked about the quarterback situation of Florida yet. And they're probably glad because, you know what I mean? For once, all eyes aren't on DJ Lagway, but it's still a major storyline this week. He played the first half last week against Kentucky, was not great, threw 3 interceptions. He was taken out in the second half. Tramel Jones, the true freshman, played, and I think was 9 of 17 for 60 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. The offense wasn't great either. I mean, like Steve Spurrier mentioned on Pat Dooley's podcast earlier this week, he didn't get any protection. Yeah. Receivers didn't get, and the receivers didn't get open. That's a not a great combination there. So this week, what's going to happen? Billy Gonzalez addressed this Monday. What's the latest there?
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why maybe we're not talking about, certainly we did after the game Saturday, but it's not maybe necessarily the story that it could have been this week, because Billy Gonzalez came out and said that DJ Lagway is still going to take the first team reps. And the way that he described his takeaway from Saturday, it didn't make it seem like it was going to be an open competition this week. Billy Gonzalez said that there is competition every week. And yes, DJ's still going to have to, play the way that he needs to play to stay in the spot that he's been in. But it's clear that he's still going to be in that spot. And the analogy that Billy Gonzalez used was DJ is no different than a major league pitcher that went out and had a bad outing on the mound and had to get pulled in the second or third inning or fourth inning because he was having a bad day. That doesn't make him a bad pitcher. That doesn't mean that we're not going to start him again. It just means that wasn't his day. And that was how he viewed DJ's performance. Now, Florida fans might hear that and be like, hey, man, that dude's had a couple performances like that this season. But I think the point and the takeaway from that is Billy Gonzalez is not at the point where he's ready to, I think, give up on DJ or start Tramel. That's just not where he's at. That's not how he feels about his quarterback. And honestly, part of the discussion that we had with Billy Gonzalez on Monday was also about, redshirting and if there's any more players that could do what Tank Hawkins is doing. And one of those guys that they're having to be mindful of is Tramel Jones, and that he has played 2 games. And so that, he can only play 2 more to preserve his red shirt. I would imagine that the staff and probably he and his family at this point don't want to waste a year given everything that's happened, and it's, they got a losing record, it's interim coach. Like, he needs to be able to keep his red shirt this year. So he can only play in 2 more regular season games. And I think that if Florida had to pick which games that they would have to want to insert him into, it would be the 2 home games. So I think ideally you want Lagway he's going to keep taking the first team reps this week, as Billy Gonzalez said, but you want him, I think, as a staff and for Tramel, for him to be able to play this game at Ole Miss and play the full 60 minutes, not have to get pulled. and then see how he does and see where Florida is at coming into the last 2 home games. But that's kind of where things stand. It was still crazy though that he got pulled.
Yeah.
Keith, there was all those rumors that he had in his NIL contract that he couldn't get pulled. Those were proven false.
Well, and I know a lot of fans are giving up on him, and I get it, man. I mean, it's tough. You're so invested in your team, and these guys. Look, he's the quarterback. He's making all the money. We know that.
Yeah.
But wherever he is next year, Florida or somewhere else, it's going to be a major. And somebody brought this up to me the other day that really follows this stuff closely. A major reclamation project. Right. Now he could finish this season strong. We could see a different DJ Lagway. There were signs against Texas and Mississippi State that we were going to see a different DJ Lagway. And then it's sort of gone backwards the last couple of games.
Yeah.
But, the potential is still there. But I people are getting tired of hearing about potential, obviously. But it's going to be a major reclamation project. You really hope for his sake and for Florida, but for him that he – this is a guy that – I know he makes a lot of money. I get that. We're saying it over and over. But he has never not represented the university in a class way, I think. That's my opinion. And I think he truly loves the University of Florida. This kid, look, they don't get this kid if he didn't grow up a diehard Gator fan. I mean, that had a lot to do with it. He feels a special connection to Florida. So I think people – look, this season's lost, all right? So now's the time. You got your wish. You got your head coach fired. Now's the time to give this kid some love and get him going right in the back in the right direction. That's the way I look at it. If you're a fan, you can agree to disagree, you can yell at him, you can do whatever you want, but I don't think that does any good. All right. So they've got to get this guy going. That's the only chance that they have of even being competitive in these next 3 games. FSU is not very good either. So you should be competitive in that one no matter what. But who knows? If Florida plays like it did last Saturday, anything is possible. So let's see what he can do this week. One other thing, Zach, I wanted to ask you. Billy Gonzalez was asked yesterday on Monday about the effort, and if you wanted to add anything on TJ, go ahead, but he was asked about the effort of the team Saturday in Lexington. That's a tough question for a coach to be asked because they got to go back and deal with all 8,500 of these guys or whatever. And if the coach says, if he's a little too hard on them, these aren't kids from the 1980s and 90s. They don't handle this criticism that well, okay? And so he said, I think he said, Zach, that he didn't see any quit in them, right? Wasn't that what he said?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, he did.
Now fans argued with me. I wrote over the weekend that I didn't think they quit. I didn't think they laid down, but it didn't look like the focus and effort where they usually were. I think anybody watching the game, Zach, could have seen that. Guys were having to make arm tackles. Guys were getting dragged several yards. Blocking didn't look so, it just didn't look like their heads were in it. And that happens. I get that. But he said they didn't quit. And what did you make of that whole exchange? Any thoughts on that, Zach? That was interesting.
Yeah, I thought that it was interesting that he said that the first thing that he did after the game was get on the plane and rewatch the game to look for that. He wanted to specifically see on tape, was there anybody that was loafing, quitting, giving up on plays? And you're right. He said that he didn't see that. Rewatching the game, I didn't necessarily feel that. I just felt like they just got their butts whooped. I think that the game got away from them. I think they lost momentum. I think when DJ threw 3 interceptions in the first half, and look, I mean, the defense, to its credit, they came up with their turnovers too and kept getting the ball back. But I also think, man, that I think there's something mental to be said about that game, and I think that Florida probably, in a way, they let Georgia beat them twice. I think that there was some hangover from that game, and I equated it to kind of the 2021 season when Florida played Alabama in the Swamp, and there was so much built up to that game. There's so much riding on that game. It was the rematch of the 2020 SEC championship game. This was Florida's chance to get Bama in the Swamp. I think they were ranked number 1 at the time, and that was Florida's season. If they won that game, they were going to be able to kind of go as far as they wanted to go. And they lost in the Swamp in a close game at the end. And it was just like the air got let out of their season. And then the next week, they went to Lexington and got their ass kicked. in 2021. And I kind of felt like that's what this was. I just felt like so much was riding on that Georgia game, had been built up into that Georgia game. If they get a win, man, maybe they can win out and still have a good record. And when they lost to Georgia, it was just like, man, they were deflated. And I think it carried over into Lexington.
They said they left everything on the field in Jacksonville, but I think that was they
maybe did.
Yeah. So there's some truth to that. I agree with you on that. However, here's where I don't think they quit. They were in the game. The turnover, I mean, they were driving on one series to take the lead, and there was a turnover. So they were still in the game. But I think if your effort and focus aren't 100%, if you just drop it to 98%, that 2% is a big difference. The margin for error is slim. You're watching these SEC games now, Zach, and they're like NFL games. Well, all but the Florida-Kentucky game. They're all close. They all come down to a few plays. And I equate this, I used to write about pro tennis, and when a guy was injured, Zach, they wouldn't come back until they were 100% mental, 100% physical, because they knew if either one of them wasn't 100%, even if you were a top 10 player and you played the number 200 player in the world, you could get the floor wiped of you. You know what I mean? Because the margin for error was so small. So I don't think that they quit. I disagree with anybody that says that. We're going to have people arguing with us. But I definitely didn't see the effort and intensity that we saw against Georgia. And in fact, the very fact that Billy Gonzalez admitted that was something he went and looked at.
Correct. It means that was on his mind.
Right. He was thinking, okay, wait a second here. And also, I think there is some level of, he recruited a lot of these guys. Anybody that doesn't know Billy Gonzalez, you're talking about one of the truly, I know people hate when we say this, but we get to know these guys. I'm sorry, but we get to know them. So we can tell you that guy's an ass. That guy's a great guy. Billy Gonzalez is one of the nicest, most genuine people. His players love him. He's very personable. The families that recruit him like him a lot. He connects well with people. He listens well with them.
I've never had a bad interaction with the guy.
Never. Okay. So, I wish he was getting this done more, right? I mean, you wish he was, everybody wishes he was having more success at UF right now. I get that. But I don't think, I think part of his answer has to do, Zach, maybe I'm wrong here, that he wants to he comes from that era where the guys are hurt. They're down. And maybe some of them have kind of maybe checked out a little bit. I think he just wants to love them up a little bit and see what happens. He's going to try that, okay? At least publicly.
Yeah, there's enough people ripping him.
That's right. There's enough people ripping. Now, privately, he may be like, listen, you.
Oh, no, listen, I was told he dropped a bunch of F-bombs in the locker room after the game and said that this was unacceptable. And he didn't do that after Georgia, by the way.
There you go.
That wasn't the post-game talk that he had. He was F-bombing them after Kentucky. So there you go.
Keep it in the family, right? Keep it in the family. So anyway, we'll see. It's an intriguing week. We got to talk a little Gator basketball. We got one final ad read, right, Zach?
That's right. That's right.
This is the important one, obviously. Yeah.
This is the important one. It's
take that.
The favorite one from Florida fans every single week because it's college football season, and college football season is Modelo season. If you're listening to this right now, it means it's time for reward. Reward your full-time fandom with an ice-cold Modelo. Modelo is the official beer sponsor of the college football playoff. Gator Nation, you deserve a Modelo. All righty. You're on mute, my man.
I'm back. So I've got a basketball game Tuesday night. Florida is 1-1. The Gators came in, third in the preseason AP poll? Was that where they were at?
That's right. Yep.
They lost their opener, a back and forth game against Arizona, and they have plummeted to number 10 in the rankings, losing to a very good Arizona team. I don't quite get that. But look, we know this is a really good Florida team. They rebounded against North Florida in game 2. Obviously, they're going to win that game every time anyway. But Zach, did you see a different team? I mean, did they, they got the hard opponent. Then you get to play the feel-good game. Where do you think they sit after 2 games? How do they feel about themselves right now? They feel like they're in a good spot? Like this is –
not only that, man, I don't know. I get the sense. I don't – I don't feel like on our Gators online message board and our loyal basketball followers that we have there that are always in our threads and are always posting, like I don't think that they overreacted to that first game. Maybe there was some of that noise on social media. You know how it can get. But like the sense that I get from Golden, from the players, is like they not only are they not concerned about the fact that they lost that first game, there's a lot of things that they're encouraged by from what they've seen by the way that they've performed in the first two. And, they scheduled that opener against Arizona to be tested, to see how they would measure up, to figure out, as Todd Golden said, what their warts were, but be able to have to come back and kind of address and improve. And that was kind of what they did, certainly against North Florida. Like, the point of emphasis was in the paint. They were out rebounded against Arizona, outscored in the paint, and then just completely dominated them on the boards, second chance points, offensive rebounds. Florida set a program record against North Florida with 29 offensive rebounds. And here's the craziest stat, Keith, which I'm going to write about at Gators Online, is that I think Todd Golden said that they grabbed 63 or 64% of their misses on offense. They got offensive rebounds, 63 or 64%. He said the previous high that he had ever had was like 51. So and he goes, usually if you're in like the 40s, you've had a great offensive rebounding performance. If you're rebounding 40% of your misses. So for them to get 63, 64%, just complete domination on the offensive glass. And I think kind of a tone setter for what they want the rest of non-conference play. Still some things that, that they want to get better at and shore up, 3-point shooting, at the foul line. Although I will say, Alec Condon and Micah Handlogden were great at the charity stripe against the Ospreys, especially Condon. But I think there's a lot more that they're encouraged by and kind of like the response that they saw in game 2 than they're concerned with. And, I think there's a lot of talks, maybe also some about Boogie Flan, Keith, and, his first impressions, the first couple of games, and how's he running the offense compared to Walter. And maybe people had more expectations for him than what he's produced so far, but he's not been bad whatsoever. And look, Todd said, hey, man, my point guard goes the first 2 games, including one against a high-quality opponent, and has no turnovers in 2 games. I'll take that anytime. That's a good starting point for your point guard. So they're averaging, 1.75 points per possession when Boogie Flan is on the floor. So I think they feel good about where they're at, but this is certainly a big matchup on Tuesday night in the O-Dome.
Yeah, Tuesday night in the O-Dome versus FSU. For many years, FSU kind of ran this series. This was a long time ago. I'm talking long time ago. FSU, by the way, averaging 104 points a game, Zach. Unbelievable. By the way, they played Alcorn State and Alabama State. Okay, so they didn't go out and schedule Arizona, but they're trying to build their program. This is a rebuild project in Tallahassee, so they're going to have good athletes like they always do. They're going to play hard like they always do, but Florida just looks like 10 deep and all that stuff. Zach, we're not going to know for a while what this team can be, right? This is still so early. And there's big games coming up for Florida too, but. How does he? What are his concerns? What are his concerns moving forward, Todd? Has he expressed any, or is he? Because he seems like this guy that's like an eternal optimist, especially when he's talking about his team. What does he think they need to get better at?
Yeah, that's a great question, Keith. I think more than anything, it starts with 3-point shooting. That's certainly the area that they're probably emphasizing the most. I don't necessarily know that means, or he feels rather that they've taken bad shots or that they're not necessarily doing what they should be to get the results that they want beyond the arc. But that is, I think, a point of emphasis. I think also, still figuring out their lineup and like the best rotation, some of their combinations that they use with their bigs. The other thing, and I don't know if this is a concern, but it's an unknown. And we wrote about it before the start of the season, and it's still, going to show itself, I think, in non-conference and SEC play, is who is Florida's shot maker. Who is the guy that is going to be their go-to guy when they need a basket, when the game is on the line, like we saw against Arizona? And I think that everybody would agree and feel that Thomas Houck is a guy that can step up and make those shots in those big moments. But who are some other guys, maybe more specifically in the backcourt, that can step up and be that, whether it's Xavier Lee, Boogie Flan, so that's I think some things that we still got to see from this team. And then just the consistency in the front court. Like, they are supposed to be and should be the best front court in the country. So playing like that each and every night, always winning the battle on the boards, doing what they need to from an offensive rebounding standpoint, second chance points, like that's got to be their calling card for them to be the type of team that they need to be.
It feels like that first game humbled, it was a good humbling experience. Sometimes you need those once in a while. It feels like the front court got humbled a little bit in that opener at Arizona. So in the next few weeks, in the next month, let's say, Florida's got games at Duke and then UConn in Madison Square Garden in New York. But this week, again, FSU tonight and then then Miami on Sunday. I don't ever think fans should take those two teams lightly or not consider those big games, right? Because exerting your will, claiming state supremacy, I think is still a big deal, because there was a time, and older Gator fans can remember this, when the Florida basketball team struggled to do that. And obviously this is, 6 Final Fours ago. This is before the program really took off. But so I like these two games this week for Florida, FSU and Miami. Win those, let everybody know that you're still by far the top dog in the state. And then you go on and you've got, in a few weeks, you got TCU, then Duke, UConn, George Washington, St. Francis of PA, and then Colgate, and then Dartmouth. Then Xavier Lee's going to get to play an Ivy League team, except this time he's going to be playing them with 6 other guys that might be playing in the NBA in a few years. But Zach, I like this basketball team, and I don't think, and I've talked to some people, and I know you're over there all the time, I don't think there was any real concern. I mean, they were right there with Arizona. The game was there for the, it was.
I think there'd been concern if they got beat and just weren't able to be competitive down the stretch and come back the way that they did. I mean, they did.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that there aren't issues that, hey, there are some things that we didn't do well. You can get better at all that stuff. But all things looking pretty good for the UF basketball team. We'll learn a lot more about them in the coming weeks. Zach, that is it. You're heading to Oxford when? Friday morning?
Friday morning. I got to figure out where I'm doing hot yoga.
Well, our budget's a little light this quarter, so Zach's actually hitchhiking up to Oxford. So have fun, man. Hot yoga. Yeah. Now, what if
if I stroll in there and Lane Kiffin's,
you gonna take your shirt off and start posting photos or not?
I will not. I don't think the wife would be too thrilled with that.
Hey, if you like what we're doing, hit the like and subscribe button down below. Can you put that graphic up? And also,
yes, sir.
Leave a comment. And Zach is going to Oxford. So, I used to cover camps in Oxford every summer, football camps, back when Hugh Freeze was the coach there. And but if you have a suggestion, if you got a place in the Oxford area that you think Zach needs to eat at, Zach, I love pizza at Soul Shine down near the square in Oxford.
Okay.
Love good kind of sports bar vibe, but with good pizza. All right. And fun town. You're going to have a good trip. It's going to be a big game this week. Everybody is curious. I'm interested to see what the TV ratings are for this one. Are they going to spike at all? Is every Florida fan that's claiming they're never going to watch any more games this season, are they actually going to turn this one on and check things out? It should be fascinating. All right. That's it for this edition of the Gators Online Show. We appreciate everybody stopping by. And if you are going to Oxford like Zach, have a safe trip, have a fun trip. Try to enjoy the rest of the season. It's been difficult, but better days are always coming. For Zach Albaverdi, I am Keith Niebuhr. This was the Gators Online Show. Take care, everybody.